Some love running. Some hate it. Some are just starting. Some have been running since they took their first steps. Some think running is the most natural form of movement there is. Some think it's demanding, hard, and takes everything they have. Some run fast. Some run far. Some run for fun. Some run because it's an obsession. Some run because they want to get fitter, lose weight, or feel energized. Some run because they want to beat their opponents, their personal best, or win a race. Everyone is different, but everyone is a runner. The question is, which kind of runner are you? Find out April 2022.
Run. Run more. Run faster. Run stronger. Run hard. You better run.
Welcome everyone to this third session of the Polar Virtual Run Clinic series, where we bring you some of the best experts to help you enjoy every run and perform at your best. I'm Kylie Glover, and I'm here with my Polar team today and a very special guest to talk about all things running and nutrition. Nutrition is one of those areas that can be really difficult to get the right information, and even when you have it, it can be really tough to implement. So we're here to help and share the latest evidence-based information with you to help fuel your runs. Polar have been collaborating with some of the world's best athletes, researchers, and performance experts for decades to bring you personal guidance for fitness, sports, and health. We want to share this knowledge with you, and that's why we created these running clinics. That's why we keep bringing you the best in wearable technology. So to that point, we do have some hot off the press news for you today. We are so excited to reveal a new generation of running watch, just launched today, the Polar Pacer series. It's engineered for runners to provide personalized guidance and support across the entire runner's journey, from the first kilometer to the marathon and beyond, helping you to fall in love with running. More on the new products later. We're dying to tell you more about them, but for now, I'll pass the mic over to your Polar host for the session, Ross Dougal, Channel Manager for Sport, and our resident sports scientist, John Eastdown. Now, if you haven't already signed up to the Polar Running Club, the link is on the screen, and that's where you'll get access to the recording of today's session, of previous sessions, some fantastic running content, running programs, and exclusive offers. So click the link, sign up, and I'll hand over to Ross to crack into today's content.
We have made it to the third webinar of our virtual running clinics. If you have missed an earlier session, or you do want to revisit some of the expert content we had there, do make sure you are signed up to the Polar Running Club. It's our free resource to help runners. And if you need help on how to build a safer or more effective running program, or if you are starting to feel that you might be heading for an injury, or you may want to know how to run around them, then there are some excellent tips in these sessions for you, which leads us on to the topic for this session. We are going to take a deep dive into one of the most requested topics, and that is nutrition for runners. So in this session, we are going to give you the toolkit that you'll need to fuel your training, recovery, and racing so that you can be at your best. We'll kick off by looking into the essentials of running nutrition. We'll look at some important guidelines. We'll also look into recovery nutrition, how you need to stay hydrated, what you need to do in terms of fueling your race. We're also going to look at carb loading and some really important common questions that we get on nutrition. As always, we will take a quick look into technology and how we can use technology to make some really smart decisions around our recovery and our nutrition planning. And we will also be able to give you a sneak peek, one of the first in the world, into the new Polar Pacer range of running watches. And as always, we will have live Q&A throughout. So do keep your questions coming in. Thank you so much. And to expertly guide us through this topic, we are very thankful to have Danielle De Francesco with us. Danielle is an accredited practicing dietitian and specialist sports nutritionist. Not only that, she has been an elite level long distance swimmer, triathlete, and most recently scooping up medals at the National Track Cycling Championships. As someone who has such a high volume of training stress and international racing, she is perfectly positioned to take us through her tips and experience on how to fuel to meet the demands of such a busy lifestyle. Danielle, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, and thank you for having me. When it comes to running, you've got various different nutrients that you really need to look out for and make sure that you're getting enough of. And this includes our three main macronutrients. And you might have heard them already. It's your carbohydrates, protein, and fats. So the carbs, first up, they're broken down by your body into glucose, and it's the main source of energy for your body's cells, tissues, and organs for optimal function. They are the sugars, starches, and fibers that you find in fruits, grains, veggies, milk products, and that includes things like your rice, pasta, potato, bread, pumpkin. And then you've got protein. So protein are essential nutrients for your human body. They're the building blocks of body tissue, and they can also serve as a fuel source, just like carbohydrates. Examples can include seafood, such as your salmon and whitefish, shellfish, and then also your lean red meats, poultry, including chicken breast and turkey, and then also your vegetarian plant-based options, such as legumes, beans and lentils, tofu, tempeh, nuts and seeds. Lastly, we've got our fats. So fats are also an essential part of our diet. They're really important for good health, and that includes your avocado, nuts, seeds, extra virgin olive oil. There are different types of fats, and some are healthier than others. And you might have heard of your saturated fats, and these ones are found in your really fatty foods like fried foods, full fat dairy. So they're your not so good fats, but to make sure you're really healthy and on top of your healthy fats, you want to make sure you're getting a lot of unsaturated fats in your diet. Fats are really important because a lot of your vitamins, including vitamin A, D, E, and K, are fat soluble. That means they require fat to be absorbed fully into your body. So that's why these healthy, unsaturated fats are important in your diet. Your body uses two main fuels for exercise, and that's carbs and fats. So fat is the primary fuel source for your less intense exercise. So that's low to moderate intensity, often referred to as your aerobic exercise, while carbs are your primary fuel source for more intense exercise from moderate to high intensity. So carbs can deliver energy a lot faster to muscles rather than your fats. So that's why it's referred to as your performance fuel. And fats like the diesel, so important for your lower intensity, longer distance races are really low intensity. The body stores both fuels, carbs and fats, but unfortunately the stores for your carbs are much smaller than those for fats. So the typical athlete will also have 500 to 800 grams of carbs stored in muscle and liver as glycogen. And that's only a small fraction versus your fat stores. And it's enough to fuel for 2 to 3 hours of intense exercise, but you really want to make sure that you're getting enough carbohydrate through your exercise to stay on top of that and that you're not running out of fuel.
Thank you so much for helping us to understand some of the important nutrition building blocks there, Danielle. Could you take us through some of the really important daily nutrition guidelines? So what else do runners need to consider to execute well for their daily nutritional intake so that they can not only support their training, but also their daily lifestyle?
You obviously have to include those main nutrients each day in your daily routine, but the amount of it also differs depending on the training day that you have for the week. So when it comes to your carbohydrates, that alters depending on how much training you're doing for the day and the intensity as well. So for most of you out there training for your half or your full marathon, a 1 to 3 hour day of your moderate training, you should be aiming for 6 to 10 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate, and that's per body weight. So say a 60 kilogram athlete out there, you want to try and aim for 600 grams of carbohydrate for the day. If you're doing, say, a light day of training, so just a recovery run, say half an hour, you can really back it off to 3 to 5 grams per kilogram of body mass for the day. And that's just small amounts of carbohydrate spread through the day. And then we've got in between that a moderate day of training. So say around an hour, your carb intake should really be up around that 5 to 7 grams per kilogram for the day. When it comes to your macros, it's really easy to put all your focus on carbohydrates and forget about that other main macronutrient, your protein. And as an athlete, our requirements are a lot higher because obviously we're putting ourselves under a bit more stress than someone who doesn't get out there and run and isn't focusing on the marathon. So your requirements should be in between 1.3 grams to 1.8 grams per kilogram per day of protein. So a regular non-athletic person should be aiming around that 0.8 to 1 grams per kilogram of protein for the day. So you can really see that increase there to make sure that you're keeping up with that wear and tear and the damage of your muscles. Not only is it our lean muscle mass that we're really trying to repair, it's also our immune function that we're trying to support as well. If your intake falls below that 1.3 grams per kilogram per day, you do put yourself at risk of lengthened recovery time from your training. So you might find it a little bit harder to back up the next day. You might find you're quite sore with DOMs the next day, and you might be quite weak in your muscles. So making sure that you're getting enough protein and spreading it throughout the day.
So now we're looking more specifically at our actual daily training. As we've certainly talked about in the series, there are many different types of runs. So we've obviously got the long run, we've got the easy run, we've got tempo runs, we've got intervals. So it's really important to make sure that we are fueled for the workload required. Danielle, could you take us through some of the key considerations for the different types of running as they might relate to those sessions?
With different training sessions, you need to fuel yourself differently to make sure you're off of those glycogen stores that we just spoke about earlier, making sure you're not bonking or hitting the wall, as some people say. So any training session less than 45 minutes, so say you're going out for an easy trot, 45 minutes or less, you're not requiring any carbohydrates to take on board with you. Your body will be relying on what you've had that morning or during that day. It's not important to take some carbohydrates with you on a short run. Anything around that 45 to 75 minutes, research has found that just small amounts of mouth rinsing with something like a Powerade or a sports drink has been shown to help your performance and really help you push that little bit further, because you have little receptors on your tongue and it thinks it's got carbs coming on board. So you're really able to push that little bit further. But for the race, I think it could be worth taking a gel on board and practicing that in your 45 to 75 minute jogs. Anything around that 1 hour to 2.5 hours, this is where carbohydrates become really important, and making sure you take something with you. So heading out for a long run, just to give you an idea of what that 30 grams per hour might equate to, it could be a gel and then also taking a small amount of sports drink with you on board. If you're not taking any sports drink with you, so say it's just an hour, you could take 2 gels with you and really practice with that. An energy bar as well. So some energy bars are up around that 30 grams. So that could also be another good option, but it's worth always checking the nutrition panel of the products that you're purchasing. So all your gels, some of them can vary. So checking out the nutrition panel, checking that carbohydrate row and making sure that you're getting 30 to 60 grams per hour for anything around 1 to 2.5 hours. If you happen to be heading out for a longer run than that, say 2.5 hours, then that's where it increases even more, but that's up around the 90 grams per hour. Really takes a lot of training the gut. So 30 to 60 grams will be your main focus for this event, I'd say. It will also take some training to really tolerate that amount of carbohydrate in training.
So, Danielle, as the training or the racing duration increases, there's a really big increase, obviously, in the carbohydrates that's required. So, obviously, under 45 minutes, not required. But when we're getting into that 1 to 2.5 hours, it's 30 to 60 grams. And in some of those longer efforts, 2.5 hours plus, it's up to 90 grams. Does that amount of carbohydrates need to be taken from the very start or into the second or the third hour of those runs?
From the very beginning. Otherwise, if you start off deficient in carbohydrates, then it will really affect you towards the end. So we'll cover it shortly, pre-race and pre-training carbohydrates, but you really want to make sure you're carb loaded and ready to go with your glycogen stores before you run. And then every hour you consume at least 30 grams before you get to that hour. So say every 5 kilometers or every 20 minutes, have something.
One of the biggest talking points that we've had and certainly started to cover in our last session with Brad Bear was all about recovery. And the big point that he was making is it's really the training that you adapt to is what will help your performance. But obviously to recover well from those trainings and get the adaptations, we obviously have to fuel really well after our sessions. Could you talk us through some of the nutrition guidelines for runners? So what to consume after a workout?
The post-exercise period is really important to make sure that you're adapting to your training. If you're not fueling yourself enough after your session, then you really will struggle to find that you're improving in training. So it's the most critical time to really get those nutrients in straight after training and within 30 minutes. So your high intensity training sessions really deplete your glycogen stores. So consuming a real carb-rich meal or snack soon after your training session will really help to maximize your recovery process. In addition to the carbohydrates and replenishing glycogen, you also want to make sure you're getting in some high-quality protein as well to help aid muscle repair. So 20 to 25 grams of protein straight after your session or as soon as you can get it in will really help you with speeding up your recovery process. Finding that combination of protein and carbohydrate in either snacks or a meal will be really important. It's not very beneficial to have a massive protein meal or snack straight after your session. Spreading it through those hours following your training session will be important. That really stimulates muscle protein synthesis, which improves your recovery and facilitates that repair of any damaged tissue that you've just done in your hard session and will enhance your performance for your next session as well. Also, you want to make sure, as well as the carbs and the protein, that you are replenishing that lost fluid and electrolyte that you've just sweated out as well. So getting in some water immediately after your session and possibly even some electrolytes in the form of something like FAQs.
Being somebody that obviously gets through a lot of training and racing and also sees a lot of what other elite athletes do, could you just give us a few examples of what some of those post-workout carbs and proteins may be? Is it as simple as just a sports drink and maybe a protein shake? Not sure if it's water or water plus milk, after the training or the race, or what do you certainly see that works quite well?
Everyone's individual. It depends on what you can tolerate. I know personally, my appetite's quite low after something like running, whereas it's a little bit higher after cycling. So if you do struggle with your appetite, maybe a liquid recovery drink would be probably your best option. So something like a smoothie with your milk in there for a bit of protein. If you have some protein powder, you can definitely add that in there as well. Making sure that it is approved and on the informed sport list will also be beneficial for some. So a smoothie with the carbohydrates in the form of banana as well with some protein powder. Otherwise, if you're feeling up to some food straight away when you get home, say it's you run early in the morning and you get home straight away, have something like some muesli with some protein in the form of yogurt, your Greek yogurt. YoPro and Chobani are really high quality, high protein yogurt. So that's also another combination if you're feeling up to solids.
All right, now we're going to take a closer look at hydration. Danielle, if you could take us through some of the importance of being really mindful around hydration and what to do. Obviously, this is really important when we're starting to go the distance or running in climates which might be quite warm as well. If you could give us some pointers here, that'd be fantastic.
As most of you might know, the Gold Coast is quite a warm place to be. And especially when you're doing something like a marathon, you really want to make sure that you are on top of your hydration, because dehydration is also another cause of fatigue during both training and racing. Our bodies sweat to make sure that our temperature, our body temp stays within acceptable limits and that we don't overheat. So sometimes it's the only way for our body to cool down in really hot conditions like the Gold Coast is sometimes. If we lose too much sweat and become dehydrated, it's a lot harder for our body to maintain optimal body temp. So anything less than 3% of our body weight loss, your performance is at risk of being affected. Our goal is to really not lose any more than 1 to 2 kilograms of body weight. So if you go for a run in the morning, weigh yourself, and then when you come home, weigh yourself again, check out that body weight loss and make sure it's not any more than 3% of your body weight. So you want to start your race hydrated, not only on the morning of your race, but also the days leading into your race. It can be quite easy to get caught up in the carbohydrates and making sure you're eating enough, but also make sure you're really drinking enough in those days leading into your race. And even in training, making sure you start hydrated before you head out in the morning or in the afternoon, whatever time of day that you prefer to run. If you're out working all day long as well in the sun, making sure you're on top of that fluid before you start running in the afternoon and that you're not dehydrated before you start. So on race day, you want to make sure that your urine, so your urine's a really good indication, the color of it, of whether you're hydrated or not. So making sure it's a pale color. You don't want it to be really clear or you don't want it to be really yellow. Really clear means that you could be overhydrated, and obviously dark yellow can mean that you are quite dehydrated. So around 500 mils around 2 hours before you start your race. Drink to thirst if you're taking it easy. But if you decided that you want to try and go for a good time or you really want to push yourself in the race, it's good to have a plan in place of your hydration. So start hydration early, because as you get through the race, your GI tract or your gastrointestinal tract, the function of it might start to decline as all your blood starts to circulate towards your legs and away from your stomach. So function of your stomach starts to decline a little bit as you start to get on in your race. So making sure that you really stay hydrated at the start when it's really functioning well, and that you can absorb the carbohydrates and the fluid from your on-course nutrition or your carbohydrate electrolyte that you are having in the morning and the days leading into your race. Drinking too much fluids can also be dangerous. So hyponatremia, so that's where the amount of salt and other electrolytes in your body become too diluted because you're just drinking too much and your sodium levels start to decline and become dangerously low. So making sure that you're drinking enough but not too much in the days leading in and also during your race, as it can become quite fatal. And if you start to find that you're getting some symptoms like bloating in your race, don't force fluids in, you'll just make it worse. Just reduce the intensity of your race and just allow your gut to absorb those fluids and let it pass through your intestine for absorption. Cramping can be related to various factors, both underfueling, so not getting those carbs in early enough in your race, not having enough in the days leading into the race, which we'll cover soon, not drinking enough, not being hydrated enough before you start, and not keeping on top of your hydration in the race. Electrolytes, so you might not be getting enough electrolytes, so you might be excreting too much through your sweat. You're just losing too many electrolytes to maintain your body function. Research shows that even just being undertrained and not having that conditioning there can also cause cramps. So if you feel them coming on, don't stress. Make sure you're on top of your nutrition, maybe back it off a little bit until it's passed. But if you've fueled yourself enough, if you've trained well enough, you should be fine on the day.
So now that we've got a better understanding of the hydration guidelines, Danielle, it would be really helpful if you could start to help take us through how do we actually get this right in our training. So obviously it's going to take some time for our bodies to become used to our hydration plans and what we need to do in training so that we can train our gut to work well during the race. Could you take us through some of the guidelines and, if possible, also some of the important distances and if it relates there as well?
Training the gut is pretty much like training your muscles. So you get out there, you do all your hours of training, your gut's just the same to prepare for race day. So it takes time and it also needs careful planning. So if you avoid certain nutrients, you can actually detrain your gut. For example, if you're restricting your carb intake or your total energy intake, so the amount of calories that you have for the day, you're actually at a disadvantage during the race because your gut can't handle the amount of carbohydrate that you're taking on board. So really making sure that you train with whatever you're going to race with and don't avoid any really important nutrients like your carbohydrates or your protein or your energy. During training, you want to try and mimic the carb intake that you'll do on your race day. Initially, you might start a little bit lower because you find that you run into some gut problems. So starting low and really building up that carb intake and that carb tolerance. Find out what your target will be depending on the type of race that you're doing and work with that in training. If you've never run a 10K before, your first run would never be a 10K, or it generally shouldn't be. You should work your way up there. But if you do a shorter run every week and build up to that, then you find that the 10K is quite easy. So you want to do the same thing with your nutrition as well. So really building up to achieve your target carbohydrate intake for the race. It's recommended you start around 6 weeks prior to your race, but ideally up to 10 weeks before your race. You want to try and start experimenting with your carbohydrate intake and the types of products that you're going to use in training. So as you might know or not know yet, FAQs will be your on-course nutrition for the day. And they have a range of products, but specifically their FuelX carbohydrate electrolyte drink will be on the course. And for those of you who haven't heard about FAQs, they're a local company based in Burleigh on the Gold Coast with their own manufacturing facility. And they offer a range of nutritional products such as you might have heard of cramp fix. So if you're prone to cramps, it's worth taking one of them on board with you as well. I personally had some good success with them. Coffee shots as well. So they're great for prior to your race. If you find that works for you, we can run through that a bit later. And also their FuelX Pro, they also have available. It's similar to the FuelX, which will be on the course, but with added BCAAs, so your amino acids. The FuelX is preservative-free, gluten-free, and vegan-friendly for any vegans out there. It also contains all those carbohydrates and electrolytes that will be really important for fueling your race. It's designed to be really gentle as well on your digestive system and really quickly absorb. It'll really give you that immediate boost of energy. So 1 scoop of your FuelX powder, it contains 100 calories and about 24 grams of carbohydrate. So it's quite high carbohydrate and it's got all your electrolytes in there. So magnesium, sodium and potassium to really replace what you're sweating out on race day and during training. As mentioned earlier, if your carb requirements are up towards that 6 to 10 grams per kilogram, if you're spending 1 to 3 hours of the day doing your training sessions, it's important to include something like your fix in your bottle during your sessions to not only reach your requirements for carbohydrate for the day and also your calories or your energy intake for the day, but also making sure that you can tolerate that product during your training before the day. You don't want any surprises on race day. So making sure that your gut's used to it, that you like the taste and the flavor. I personally like it. It's really easy to get down and it's not a really overpowering product. So your gut's really trainable and it's just about being consistent in training, using that product consistently to make sure that your gut can really tolerate it on race day.
One of the topics which we certainly get the most questions about is all about carb loading. If you could take us through some carb loading guidelines for race day, that would be great.
In order to start your race with enough glycogen stores in both your muscle and your liver, as mentioned before, it's important to eat carbohydrate-rich foods on the day and the days leading into your race, depending on the event that you're doing. And we can run through those guidelines shortly. But depletion of your body carb stores is another major cause of fatigue on race day. So really optimizing that carb status whilst you're tapering at the same time will be a primary goal of your race prep. So carb loading refers to the practice of maximizing or supercompensating your muscle and liver glycogen stores prior to a race. And when it comes to races like your 10K, carb loading isn't really necessary. Just making sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates with each of your main meals the day before the race. Evidence does show that carb loading is only beneficial for those events which are greater than 90 minutes duration. So 10K, you shouldn't have to worry about. And that goes the same with the 5 kilometer as well, making sure that you're well fueled the day before and the morning of. So both your half and full marathon are a different story, and they are fairly similar in regards to your carb loading. So for a half marathon, no extreme carb loading is really required. It's just important to go to the start line with your carb stores full, which can be done by eating a normal amount of carb the day before. For example, a meal for breakfast, lunch and dinner that contains a really good portion of your pasta, rice or potato would work really well. At least a cup size or a cup hand size would be beneficial, but it does depend on your body weight as well, and male and female also differs, so we can run through that as well. It's not necessary to go out and eat large amounts of food. You just want to make sure that you're nice and light and ready to go with enough energy on race day when it comes to your half marathon. For the full marathon, 2 days of carbohydrate loading has been found to be really beneficial for your performance on race day. So to avoid any gut upset as well, you want to make sure you're getting the right type of carbohydrate and making sure that the carbs are low fiber and low fat in the days leading into your race. So when it comes to fiber is important for normal healthy bowel function, but you don't want to include it the day before you race because it is the indigestible part of a plant food. So essentially passes straight through the GI tract without being broken down. And that can cause increased bowel movements during your exercise or during your race. So that's not ideal when it comes to race day. So with that increased bowel movement, you can also get increased fluid loss, which also can really promote dehydration. So making sure that your meals are low in fiber in the days leading into the race or the morning of. And your really low fiber foods include those boring or processed foods such as your white bread, white rice, regular pasta, muffins or white English muffins and white bagels, rather than things like your high fiber cereals, oats and brown rices and brown breads. Also your whole grain pastas too, just watch out for them. As well as fiber, when you're carbohydrate loading or the day before your race, try and stay away from really high-fat foods such as those greasy fried foods, cheese, bacon, as fats really sit in your stomach and they will cause some issues during your race. So sticking to those really plain foods, low fat, low fiber, to really make sure that you avoid any gut upset on race day. When it comes to carb loading, you want to consume a little bit more carbohydrate than normal at the expense of some protein and some fat, just to make sure that you are filling up your glycogen stores without gaining any weight. So that might mean reducing your fat intake a little bit the day before and really adding some extra carbohydrates to your plate. So carb loading can get confused with overeating sometimes, or just eating as much as you can the day before your race, but that's not the idea. It's just really focusing on that important macronutrient, your carbohydrates, rather than protein and fats. Just remember, as I mentioned before, never try anything new on race day. Always practice in training first. So pick out a key long run that you might do during the week, whether that's on a Saturday morning or a Sunday, and really practice that nutrition or that carbo loading the day before and see how your gut tolerates it. You can also give the morning meal a crack as well and see how that sits in your stomach before that key session.
Brilliant. And might just ask you now, Danielle, we do get a lot of questions about the timing of that important or that carb-loaded meal the day before. If somebody does have a morning race or they're certainly having to get up pretty early, when would you recommend should be the latest the day before that they're having that meal?
You don't want to go to bed really late for starters with early starts. The Gold Coast Marathon will be quite early unless you're doing the 5K fun run. So around that 6 a.m. So definitely don't want to be eating late. I'd say around that 6 p.m. mark is a good target to eat your last big meal for the night.
So right from the night before to the morning of, and obviously during the race, Danielle, if you could take us through your recommendations for race nutrition during those important times, that'd be great.
This is where everything gets exciting and everyone's starting to get a little bit more nervous, but just making sure you're really focused on how you're fueling yourself as well. So the night before, as mentioned, around that 6 p.m. or even earlier if you go to the bed earlier, but 6 p.m. is a good mark. So making sure it's low fat, low fiber again. A really simple carb-rich meal with some lean protein in it will help to avoid any undesired gut issues on the day. So this could be your standard spaghetti bolognese topped with a small amount of your extra lean mince. So really reducing that fat for the night. Morning of, so really important to break that fast and replenish those glycogen stores in your liver after a good night of sleep. So when you wake up in the morning, your liver is virtually depleted of glycogen, so your body uses up that liver glycogen through the night. Because your liver provides carbs to maintain your blood sugar and to prevent low blood sugar levels during your race, it's really important that you wake up and replenish that liver glycogen. So this is why a good breakfast is really important before you start racing. So never wake up and skip your brekkie. Even if your appetite's really low, there's always an option that you can trial. A good pre-race brekkie for an event like the 5K fun run on the Saturday, so where your start time is a little bit later at 10 a.m. You can get in a little bit of a bigger breakfast before you start, so around 100 to 200 grams in that 3 hours before you start the race. And then you can top up with something like a little gel about 15 minutes before you start. And that's been shown to really add that extra little bit of glycogen to your muscles. With the 10 and the half and the full marathon, they all start quite early, so around 6 a.m. So I recommend a smaller meal, 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight in regards to your carbohydrates will be your target at least 1 to 2 hours prior to your race to avoid any gut upset, to allow it to digest before you start. So this could be something like your white toast, so low fiber with some honey, so simple carbohydrates and a banana, or it could be something like some plain pancakes with some maple syrup plus a cup of juice, or if you don't like juice, something like your fix before you start. Some athletes do find it difficult to eat before the race, so just due to nerves, and you might be a bit time constrained getting everything ready. But you might benefit from a liquid carbohydrate source, so something like fix or your fruit juice could be beneficial. If you know that you are prone to stomach problems, definitely avoid those brekkies that are high in fiber, fat or protein. And you also could trial low milk as well, lactose-free products, as that has been shown to cause gut upset on race day.
So now that we're into the actual race, Danielle, if you could take us through guidelines for what we should be thinking about for hydration and fueling as we go through the distances. So if we could start off at 5K and then move upwards to the marathon, and then have some considerations on what to do after the race, that would be brilliant.
So this is the exciting bits, the race day, or the race itself. So if you're doing the 5K fun run on the Saturday, it's not that important to fuel during your race. Making sure that you're well fueled before you start your race will be your important target for the day. So making sure you're hydrated and you've had that carb-rich breakfast will be important. Fueling during a 5K is not necessary. It's not long enough for your body to utilize the carbohydrates that you take on board. When it comes to a 10K, similar to the 5K, it's not quite long enough for your body to utilize those carbs that you take on board, but it could be beneficial to grab a fixed electrolyte drink on the way or whenever you can on the course to really replenish your electrolytes. And as mentioned before, just those receptors on your tongue with the carbohydrate coming on board, your body thinks that it's got some fuel coming. So just sipping on some fix on the course could be beneficial for the 10K. And then we get to the 21K, so a little bit longer. And your main fuel source for this event will be carbs, especially if you're trying to complete it under that 2-hour mark. So make sure your body has enough energy throughout the race, around 30 to 45 grams of carb per hour. If you've trained well with your carbohydrates and you can get up to 60 grams an hour, then that's also a good option. But 30 to 45 grams of carb each hour that you're out there on course is really important to make sure that you can get to the end feeling that you've still got a little bit of energy in the tank and you're not completely spent. This carb can be in the form of something like your gel or chews, like Cliff Blocks as well. If you feel like you don't like the texture of a gel and you prefer something chewable, those ones are a good option. Plus, you want your fix as well, and that will help to replenish electrolytes, keep you hydrated, which the gels or chews can't really do. So, as mentioned, 1 scoop of the fix contains 24 grams of carbohydrate, and you could have, say, a gel at the 5K mark and then a drink of fix at the next 5K mark, and so on. 30 to 45 grams of carbs every hour for the 21K will be your main goal. If you use anything else other than your like blocks or your gels, make sure that you check the nutrition panel and that the fat, the protein and the fiber in the product is really low, so no more than a few grams. It is entirely up to you as to what gels or chews you use, but I'd definitely be using the fix in training so that you can use it on race day without any issues. 42-kilometer race, so your marathon, this is where your carbs need to bump up again, just like in training. So during longer races, it's always a lot higher your target for carbohydrate than those shorter ones. And then in any races over 2 hours, it's beneficial to have up to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour if you've trained your gut really well. Don't try it for the first time on race day. You should definitely transition from your current fueling. So if you know that you're not having enough at the moment, transition really slowly up to that 60 grams per hour so that you can really target that on race day for the marathon. As mentioned, your gut's really trainable, so it will get used to it very quickly. It's just a matter of being consistent so that you can, on race day, aim for 60 grams an hour. Again, the target of 60 grams an hour can be achieved by alternating between those gels and fix. But yeah, it's all personal preference. Just make sure that you are reaching 60 grams. After the race, once you've run and won your race, it's time to start focusing on foods that can really assist you with your recovery. I know it's quite easy to get carried away with strolling around and having a chat, but this is a really important time to make sure you're getting some nutrients in to really promote your recovery. And if you've got some training the next day, it's even more important. So although you might put in all the hours into your training, most people will wake up with some degree of soreness or fatigue the next morning after race day. So make sure you get the right nutrients in and at the right time to really reduce the effects of the race so you can move a little more freely in the days after the race and you're not waddling around in pain or bedridden. So after the race, you might find that you're an hour later after your race and you still haven't had anything to eat, but this is the most crucial time where you need to be getting both carbohydrate and protein in within 30 minutes for glycogen restoration and muscle repair. It can be in the form of a simple and easy chalky milk from the servo. So that's my go-to. It's great for fluid replacement and it has that added benefit of the carbohydrate and protein in it. And that's really simple and easy. You don't have to pre-pack that just on the way home from your race or while you're at the race. Otherwise, you can pre-pack your own snacks for straight after the race. And whether that's your own protein shake with a carbohydrate source like a banana or like an up and go or something with that combination of protein and carbohydrate. If you're feeling up to a meal straight away, you can also do that. But yeah, it's a lot easier just to take a couple carb-rich and protein-rich snacks with you. When it comes to guidelines for your post-race refueling for carbohydrates, you should be trying to aim for 1 gram per kilogram of body weight soon after your race. So say a 60 kilogram person, try and get 60 grams of carbohydrates in and then continue that for the next 4 hours after your race. And this might be, say, a snack straight after your race, and then you might go and celebrate at the cafe or at a restaurant or something like that. So make sure you've got carbohydrates in that next meal too. When it comes to protein, your target should be around 20 to 25 grams to really help with repair of your muscle after all that damage you've just done in the race. So protein and carbohydrates soon after your event will really promote recovery.
Danielle, if you could just help us, we also get quite a lot of questions on a few topics. So that's the usage of caffeine, and also, are there any other supplements or vitamins that runners could take that might be helpful to them? And also, look, are there any good alternatives to gels? Maybe if people aren't that accessible to them or they don't stomach them quite well. If you could take us through those three, that'd be great.
So starting off with caffeine. So this is personal preference. Personally, I find I get a good kick out of some caffeine before both training and racing. So just a low dose, around 3 grams per kilogram, around 1 hour, 45 minutes before you start. And that's the equivalent of, say, a big cup of coffee or a couple of espressos before you start. Could help. You can have something like the Fix coffee shots. So they're really easy to take down to the race. You don't require anything with it. It's just straight coffee. You can get it in the mocha form as well. So that's an option for those who have trained with it. Again, obviously you want to make sure you can tolerate it in training before race day. So yeah, I personally do. A lot of other people that I know get too hyped up and their heart rate gets too high before they start. So it's actually not beneficial for some. All personal preference, just try it in training before race day. In regards to supplements and vitamins, again, this is personal preference. If you find that you are quite time constrained and you're struggling to meet that 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight protein, it can be easy to get it through a protein shake. If you know that you might be drug tested or there's any drug testing on course, make sure that's got that informed sport tick of approval on it. But again, it's a really easy post-training, post-race recovery supplement, your protein powder. Have it with some milk. That adds some extra carb and protein to it too. Yeah, if you can, make it up into a smoothie for some extra carbohydrates as well. When it comes to things like BCAAs as well, so your body uses up branched-chain amino acids in those long-distance endurance events. So it can be worth having a BCAA supplement both pre and post training to make sure that you're replenishing those stores as well. Magnesium, as an athlete and for someone who exercises a lot more than a regular person who's just out there doing it for fun, it is really important, magnesium, for nerve and muscle function, for your heart rhythm, bone integrity, for glucose levels. It's really beneficial for a lot of things, magnesium, and you're excreting it a fair amount while you're out there running and training. So I recommend having one daily to stay on top of your magnesium stores as well. Lastly, when it comes to gels and supplement, like on-course fueling, if you can't tolerate gels and you don't like the texture or the taste, you can always take foods with you, so solids, and this can be in the form of snakes and lollies. Personally, I like lollies because they are quite easy to get down, really simple carbohydrate, easy to digest as well. So that's an option for race day. But again, take some out with you while you're training, get used to them. And yeah, they taste really good too.
As we have done throughout this series, we're now going to pass across to John, our resident sports scientist, to take us through the science on 3 key topics relating to nutrition and performance. We'll first take a look at how much fueling you need to do for different types of runs, and then how to create an automatic fueling and hydration plan with automatic reminders so that you can focus on your running and racing and not have to worry about it. And lastly, how to know if you're getting the most out of your recovery and managing your training load well coming into an important race.
Thank you, Ross. Hi everyone, John here from the Polar team. Thanks for having me again. I would like to take just a few moments of your time to highlight how technology can assist us with our fueling and nutrition for both training, recovery and on race day. And it might seem counterintuitive that technology can help with nutrition, but it certainly can, and we're going to have a look at that now. So here at Polar, we are extremely proud to be considered as the gold standard for heart rate technology. And this is important because a lot of the other features that we see in sports watches are based on accurate heart rate measurement. It actually forms the backbone of these features in that inaccurate heart rate measurement will lead to inaccurate data in other areas. With a market-leading number of optical sensors, Polar's Precision Prime heart rate technology represents the most accurate wrist-based heart rate measurement available today and is included on all of the current range of Polar watches. One of the very important points that Danielle's mentioned tonight is fueling yourself adequately to support your recovery and training. So Polar devices give you an activity goal for the day and guide you in reaching that goal, measuring your heart rate along the way, to provide you with accurate activity data such as steps, time spent sitting and walking. But importantly in our case, your total daily energy expenditure, or how many calories you've burnt throughout the day from your daily activities and your training sessions. And this gives you actionable data on how to effectively fuel yourself with the correct amount of calories to fully support your training and recovery. We've also heard today that during training, the body primarily uses carbohydrates and fats to fuel the session, where higher intensities results in a greater proportion of carbohydrate usage and vice versa. Also built upon Polar's highly accurate heart rate measurement technology, following your session, Polar's energy sources feature gives you a detailed breakdown of exactly how many calories, carbs and fats you've burnt during your training session. And again, this can be very informative as it gives you an accurate idea of how your different training sessions lead to different amounts of energy burned for that day. And we can see a good example on this slide where there is a 25% difference in the amount of calories burnt for a day with a long run compared to a day with a recovery run. And having this kind of information at hand makes it easy to correctly fuel for the workload required and support your continued training improvements. For those of us that are taking on the longer events and or conducting training sessions that go over the 1 to 1.5 hour mark, where glycogen depletion is a major contributor to fatigue, we've heard that fueling during these sessions or races is extremely important. Polar's FuelWise Smart Carbs and Hydration feature takes the guesswork out of your fueling needs. After inputting your estimated session duration and intensity, you will receive information on how many carbs to consume across the session and also reminders throughout the session. FuelWise automatically calculates how many carbs you need based on the most up-to-date scientific information that Danielle has presented to us this evening and your personal stats. Your Polar device then monitors your energy usage during your session via heart rate measurement and pace and adjusts the automatic fueling reminders to match your carb consumption so that you'll feel energized all the way to the finish. Recovery from the training sessions that we conduct is integral to continued performance improvements, but also to general health and well-being. Without adequate nutritional intake, the beneficial effects of training and exercise will be hampered, and this can lead to stalled performance improvements and even injury and illness. Inadequate nutritional intake represents a significant stress to the body, leading to a heightened stress response, and we can measure this stress response by measuring your resting heart rate and heart rate variability. Polar's nightly recharge feature automatically collects this data throughout the night and then provides information on how well your body is coping with the demands of training but also the stresses of everyday life. The recharge feature also provides feedback on a daily basis on your level of recovery, and also recommendations on what kind of training session would be suitable for that day. We can use all of this information to ensure that we're training at the correct intensity for the correct volume or amount, and also to ensure that we are fueling ourselves adequately to support this training and promote the desired improvements. Thanks again, guys, for having me. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch.
Well, I promised we'd tell you more about the brand new Polar Pacer running watches, so let's do it. Today, Polar have launched the Polar Pacer and the Polar Pacer Pro. These are two new generation running watches that give both first-time runners and serious runners the tools and insights they need to track their Ks and inform their training. Both of these watches offer really powerful training and recovery features that are going to help you understand your body and know when you're doing too much or maybe not enough to reach your goals. With the Polar Pacer, it's retailing at just $299, so a really accessible price point and an ideal running watch for those who are starting their journey as runners. It's no-nonsense GPS running watch that really gives the modern runner all the essentials and a few extras to do that one thing, run. In addition to really long battery life, which is up to 7 days, you'll also get our most accurate GPS yet, access to running programs, fitness tests, which includes the new walking test that will give you your VO2 max. You'll also get Training Load Pro, which is going to help you manage your training and recovery, music controls and responsive smart notifications, nightly recharge, which tracks your HRV overnight and your sleep, and our best optical heart rate yet. We think this is fantastic value, and even better, they look great.
So for the pacer, we have purple dusk, deep teal, cloud white, and night black.
We are introducing 2 brand new running watches today. The second is a running watch that equips the serious runner with very powerful training tools. This is certainly for the runner who views running as a way of life, or is serious about chasing their personal bests across any distances, whether it be on the track, 5K, 10K, the half marathon, marathon, or beyond, on any surface, even if you are getting well and truly off the beaten path. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the brand new Polar Pacer Pro. This is debuting at only $499 and is the ideal watch for those runners who take their running seriously and stride to be better. The key to our new Pacer lineup of running watches is that they are simply designed for runners. The Pacer Pro comes packed with all the features that we mentioned for the Pacer, as well as a premium design with a stunning aluminium bezel and buttons, and 2 really key features for the serious runner. First up, the Pacer Pro comes with built-in running power. Many of you will be very familiar to running to your heart rate or heart rate zones or pace. This watch does an excellent job of both of those, but it also provides your running power and zones with real-time guidance. Normally, you would need quite an expensive watch to do this, or you'd need to pair your watch with another device that might include a monthly subscription. But the Pacer Pro is affordably built in with running power and ready to go as soon as you are. This means that you'll be able to easily control and manage your running effort or power across any terrain and any distance, and certainly give you the edge to know that your numbers are heading in the right direction. The next great feature of the Pacer Pro is that it includes navigation powered by our map service, Komoot. This is all you will need if you want to plan your runs across any surface, giving you turn-by-turn guidance so that you know what's around the corner, so that you can explore with confidence, find your way back to the start if you need to, and also get all of the detailed elevation and hill guidance and performance for your runs. It's also only 1 gram heavier than the Pacer and has incredible battery life and is valued at only $499 with running power and maps included on the wrist.
And for the Pacer Pro, we have carbon grey, midnight blue, autumn maroon, aurora green, and we do have 5 colours in the Pacer Pro, with the 5th one being snow white.
Just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, do sign up for the Polar Running Club. It's our free resource for you, where you'll get the recordings from these sessions, as well as go in the draw to win your very own new Pacer running watch. All you need to do is click on the link on the screen and verify. We are also very delighted to let you know that we have extended the Polar virtual running clinics. We have had a lot of questions on the topic of tapering, so we are absolutely rapt to have Benita Willis back with us to take us through how to taper the right way before an important race right across the key distances from 5 to 10K, 21, and the marathon. If you are putting in the hard yards in training, then you will find this to be a really valuable addition to your next race. You can certainly save the date, but as you're already signed up to the series, you'll get the reminders automatically. We'd also like to throw a shout out to the great local team at Fix Nutrition. If there is one key message from today, it's that you should not be trying anything new from a nutrition point of view on race day. If you would like to find out more about their on-course nutrition, fueling solutions, or even if you want to be prepared to help keep cramp at bay, do check out the link on the screen. Thank you so much for being a part of our virtual running clinic. We look forward to catching you on the next webinar, and in the meantime, all the very best with your running and safe training out there.